If you run a business, build climate strategy, or sit on a board that has ever published a sustainability target, this is the most important case study of 2026, and almost nobody is talking about it. Honestly, the 2026 FIFA World Cup kicks off in June. FIFA says the tournament will produce 3.7 million tonnes of CO2. Independent researchers put the real figure closer to 9 million tonnes. Some estimates, when you include everything, run as high as 70 million. In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how that gap was created. The fossil fuel sponsor, FIFA, signed after promising sustainability. The stadiums where players are about to play in dangerous heat. And the two enormous emission sources FIFA quietly left out of their official number. But the reason this matters is not really about football. It is about your business, because what FIFA did here is the same template I see organizations every week to make their climate claims look better than they are. By the end of this video, you will know exactly what to look for in your own organization and what to push back on. I have spent 25 years in sustainability consulting. Let's get into it. The official story versus the real one. Let's start with what FIFA actually said. 3.7 million tonnes of CO2 equivalent. That is the official sustainability claim. That is the number in the report. That is what investor sponsors and the media are quoting. Now here is the problem. That number is missing almost everything. Independent research puts the real figure closer to 9 million tonnes. And when researchers include the full picture, supply chain, merchandise, induced effect from sponsorship, global TV consumption, some estimates run to 70 million tonnes. Let me give you a sense of what 9 million tonnes actually means. That is the equivalent of 6.4 million cars running for an entire year. It is roughly the annual emissions of the Czech Republic. It is larger than the combined footprint of 145 African nations. And remember, that is the conservative number. How they made the number look small. So how does a 9 million tonne tournament get reported as a 3.7 million tonne? Two ways. And both of these are exactly what you should be looking for in any climate claim, including your own organisations. The first trick is the boundary. FIFA only counted what they directly control. Flights for teams, fuel for vehicles, energy for stadiums. They excluded what economists call induced emissions, the emissions triggered by the event, but not directly caused by it. Draw the boundary tight enough, and any number can look small. The second trick is hiding the scale of the expansion. In 2014, the World Cup was 32 teams playing 64 matches. In 2026, it is 48 teams playing 104 matches. That is a 63% increase in matches alone. But emissions do not grow in a straight line. They grow exponentially. More travel, more accommodation, more infrastructure, just more everything. And almost none of that exponential growth shows up in the official figure. This is not an accounting error. It is a design choice. Someone in a room decided where to draw that line, and they drew it where it would look best. And this is the part you need to take into your own boardroom. When any major organization reports climate action, the number they announce is not the point. The point is where they drew the boundary around their actual impact, or around what makes them look good. FIFA drew it around the narrow thing. They are hoping you do not look at the rest. And most people don't. The sponsor that shouldn't exist, that frankly made me really angry when I read it. In April 2024, FIFA announced Saudi Aramco as the title sponsor of the 2026 World Cup. Saudi Aramco is the world's largest corporate greenhouse gas emitter. One company responsible for over 4% of emissions since 1965. Read that again. One company, 4% of everything humanity has emitted in 60 years. FIFA gave them the title sponsorship anyway, after announcing the tournament would be the most sustainable. Over 100 female footballers signed an open letter against the deal. Their argument was simple. FIFA is choosing money over climate. And if they're willing to do it for the sponsorship, what does it say about every other decision they are making? They were right. And here is the part most people do not understand about how sponsorship at that scale works. It is not just logo placement. When a fossil fuel company sponsors a global event, it generates measurable sales lift. Economists quantify this as induced emissions. Researchers estimate that Aramco's sponsorship will trigger a sales boost equivalent to 30 million tonnes of additional CO2. This is not emissions from the tournament. That is emissions from the extra fossil fuels Aramco will sell because they are associated with it. 3 times bigger than the tournament's own footprint. So the real carbon story of the 2026 World Cup is not even the football. It is the 30 million tonne spike in fossil fuel sales the sponsorship deal will generate. And FIFA enabled that. The heat that's going to hurt people. Now this next bit is not just about emissions. It is about consequences. And it is the part of this story I genuinely cannot believe is not bigger news. The 2026 World Cup is being hosted in June, July and August across North America. That is one of the hottest times of the year in some of the hottest cities in the hemisphere. There is a metric called wet bulb globe temperature, or WBGT. It measures heat stress on the human body, combining temperature, humidity and solar radiation. When WBGT hits 28 degrees Celsius, that is the threshold where the athletic performance becomes physically dangerous. Collapses happen, hospitalizations happen. Researchers at Imperial College London analysed all 16 host venues. The results are alarming. Miami exceeds the safe threshold on 80% of tournament days. Houston, 90%. Dallas, 90%. 14 of the 16 stadiums exceed the safe threshold regularly. 4 of them, Dallas, Houston, Miami and Los Angeles, require what researchers call critical intervention to be safe. Not recommended, critical. And we already know what happens because we have just seen it. Last summer, Copa America was played at 4 of these same venues. Players collapsed, referees collapsed, trainers ran out of medical supplies. One match between Uruguay and Colombia saw 4 players hospitalised for heat exhaustion. And that wasn't even peak summer. That was not the hottest weeks. And players were still falling over. FIFA knows this. They have seen the data. They have read the research. And they have scheduled knockout matches, the most physically demanding features in the entire tournament in July, in the hottest cities. So here is what this tells us, and this is the lesson for your business. Climate risk is not the theoretical anymore. It is venue specific. It is measurable. It is actionable. But it only matters if a decision maker is willing to prioritize it over commercial interest. FIFA chose not to. If your organization is planning a major event, a new facility, a supply chain shift, the question is the same. Have you measured the climate risk to actual people? Not in aggregate, but in detail. And are you willing to make a different decision based on what you find? The 2 emissions nobody talks about. Now we get to the 2 emission sources that almost nobody is measuring, and they are bigger than you think. The first is television. The 2026 World Cup will generate roughly 58 billion hours of television consumption globally. Add streaming on top, and you are looking at 60 billion hours of video watched. At the carbon intensity of streaming infrastructure, that adds up to around 17 million tonnes of emissions just from people watching on screens. That is bigger than the entire annual carbon footprint of New Zealand. We do not think of watching football as a carbon activity, but at global scale, with billions of people, it absolutely is, and nobody is measuring it. The second is merchandise. The 2022 World Cup saw a 700% spike in replica shirt sales. The average football shirt produces 5.5 kilograms of CO2, and 60% of those shirts are thrown away within a year. That gets counted as waste, not as carbon. Conservative estimates put 2026 tournament at 12 million extra shirts sold. That adds another 66,000 tonnes of CO2. None of it is in FIFA's sustainability report. It is hiding in supply chains and landfills. And again, the lesson for your business is the same. Climate strategy fails when the boundary is too small. The missions that do not fit neatly into your operational footprint are exactly where the real impact lives. They are also where the real leverage is. This is a mirror. Here is why this story actually matters. FIFA's mistake is not unique. It is a template. What they have done wrong is what thousands of organizations are doing wrong right now. They have separated climate commitment from decision making. They have announced pledges, signed initiatives, published targets, and then in the boardroom they have made choices that blow those commitments apart. It happens because nobody has built a system that does not let it happen. There is no alignment between climate strategy and capital allocation. There is no consequence for greenwashing. There is no mechanism that forces a hard conversation before you sign a sponsorship with a fossil fuel giant. So if you are building climate strategy in your organization, here are the 4 questions you need to be asking today. 1. Are Are you drawing the boundary around our actual impact or around what makes us look good? 2, are we aligning capital decisions with our climate commitments, or are they running on completely separate tracks? 3, have you measured the real climate risk to our operations and our people in detail, not in averages? 4, are we willing to walk away from commercial opportunity if it contradicts our climate commitments? Those are not rhetorical questions. They are structural ones. And how you answer them is different between climate strategy that means something and climate strategy that is just a press release. The 2026 World Cup will happen. The emissions will be real. Some players will collapse from heat. Some organisations will make a lot of money. Some sponsorships will drive fossil fuel sales for years to come. But for those of us actually building climate strategy, the question is not about FIFA. The FIFA story is a mirror. The question is, where are we getting it wrong in exactly the same way? If this was useful, here is what I do on this channel. Every week, I take the biggest sustainability story businesses are getting wrong, and I show you what the real numbers say. Subscribe so you do not miss it, because if you found this useful, next week's will land the same way. Drop a comment with one question from that list: boundary, capital, risk, or walking away, that hits closest to home in your own organisation. I read every single comment, and if you are a sustainability professional, consultant, or advisor, I am building a referral network of practitioners who do this work properly. People who understand that real climate action is about decisions, not declarations. The link is in the description. At 51 to Carbon Zero, we work with FTSE, NASDAQ, Extra, and IBEX listed organisations to close the gap between climate commitment and capital decisions. If that is the conversation you need, the details are below. I'll see you next week.